Earlier this week, I embarked on a journey around the M25 in my analog supercar, the manual Audi R8 V10 from the noughties, where I was going to be swapping it for the most modern hybrid supercar that we currently have on the market today. Yes, I was heading around to the MTC in Woking, the McLaren Technology Centre, which on arrival is always an awe-inspiring experience, taking a walk down the boulevard and to see their historic Formula One cars, their Le Mans winning McLaren F1s, as well as some of their road-going Ultimate Series cars from the McLaren P1, McLaren Speedtail and the McLaren Elva. And I was there to pick up the most beautiful MSO painted Zenith Black McLaren Artura, and I was ready to throw all sorts of daily life and daily activities at the car. McLaren have loved the phrase breadth of ability ever since the 675 LT and the McLaren 720S, so surely the McLaren Artura is the ultimate daily supercar. Now you join me 3 days into my daily driving with the McLaren Artura, and so far I've taken it to supermarkets, I've taken it out for dinner, I've taken it to our weekly football match, and I've taken it to the gym, and it has excelled in so many departments which we will get onto throughout this video. But I actually want to start with where we currently are. I've taken this car out on a little bit of a countryside adventure, and you join me in the Cotswolds, where if I was taking a normal supercar, I probably would have already got kicked off this farmland, because the farmer behind me that you may be able to hear faintly in the distance bumbling away in his tractor, if I was in the Hurricane STO or a loud, brash supercar, the chances are by the time I've parked up, I've got the farmer waiting at the gates, ready to kick me and move me on down the road. And we've had a rather eventful morning, trying to find different locations where it's quiet, where there isn't any traffic, and I feel like, other than the farmer behind me, I've found it. And because I've been in comfort mode and flicking between the electric motor and the actual twin turbo V6, I've been able to creep up on these guys in complete silent mode. And we're going to start by talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly with the McLaren Artura. We are going to start with the exterior and the ugly, because absolutely none of you would agree with me if I stood here for the next 60 seconds calling this car ugly. This is one of the most beautiful cars I have looked at, a true supercar that from every angle has the road presence, it has the arches, it has the flares, it has the vents, it's so sleek, it looks like an assassin for the road, and whenever I park it up I have to look back at it. And of course the spec is absolutely perfect, but from every angle over the last 3 days I've tried so hard to try and find something that is a little bit ugly on the McLaren, and the only thing that I can think of are these vents down here. As we were able to escape the farm entrance without a trace in all electric mode, we are now out on some of the best countryside roads that the Cotswolds have to offer, and it just so happens that these roads are in and around Enstone, which is home to McLaren's arch nemesis in Formula One, the Alpine Formula One team. Now, seeing as we're coming through a village, it's probably the right time to demonstrate the electric mode and the comfort mode that you're able to select through this drivetrain selector here, that keep the car in electric mode so that you can poodle through without disturbing anyone. It is one of the sweetest touches and the best benefits to having a hybrid, especially where I live in a small little community. To be able to jump into this car and flick it on without it starting up and being super noisy, it's a really nice touch. And around here I'm sure all of the residents appreciate it as well. Now, I haven't really been using comfort mode because that switches between the motor and the battery but doesn't charge the battery. So eventually, if you were to drive around under 40 miles an hour, you would eventually deplete the battery, just like you would if you were driving in all electric mode. It's sport and track that start to regenerate the battery and give you even more battery performance to assist the engine that you have with the car. And now that we're out, we can flick it into sport and start to build that battery back up by having a little bit of fun. And fun you have, because as you will all know, the statistics on this car are frightening. It is 911 Turbo S territory, which means all it is like when you accelerate is pressing the fast forward button on the TV remote. 1 minute you're there, the next minute you're at the end of the road, and you have chomped through all of the tarmac in between. It is so hard for your mind to consume and concentrate during the acceleration that you have to have this concentration phase so much when you're on it in this car. It is so fast, and you look down, like me, the Kino of efficiency, and I realise the battery's charging the more I push on. And then, when you hit the motorways and you're able to put it in comfort mode, I've seen 36 mpg. 36! A full tank was suggesting that I get over 400 miles to a tank. And it's a tiny little tank. And then you add the electric battery as well. I reckon you could probably get 450 miles out of a full tank in this car if you really wanted to. But it's a car that encourages you to push on. And I was actually more intimidated by trying to understand the hybrid system and fearful that it wouldn't work and that it wouldn't fit into daily life, and that I was going to walk away from this drive being underwhelmed that McLaren haven't quite hit the mark with their hybrid. And whilst they've had practice with the P1 and the Speedtail, this is a different way of doing it, more like the P1 than the Speedtail. The Speedtail really was to assist that top speed, whereas P1, you're looking for performance all through the different areas of the rev range, and my God, do you get it. It is so fast, so enjoyable. It feels like a go-kart, and we all know that McLaren can make a phenomenal performance sports car, and the fact that they call this the sports car, it is insanely fast and so much fun to drive spiritedly. Now actually, on a quiet road like this, I'm going to turn the indicator off so that you can hear this weird noise that I've experienced over the last few days. Gives you an idea of classic McLaren. Because let's be honest, McLaren don't have a problem of building great cars. Over the last 4 days, I've thoroughly enjoyed my time behind the wheel of the McLaren Artura. The 720S was years ahead of its time. The 600LT as a road car is arguably one of the best, that then translates to being a phenomenal track car. And it goes without saying that my experience behind the wheel of the McLaren P1, whenever anyone asks me what is the best car that I've driven, I will always go back to that experience. So driving McLarens is a hell of a lot of fun. They make great cars. That's not the problem though. Yesterday I was over in the Cotswolds and my camera gear was more unreliable than this Artura. But it goes without saying that this car definitely has its quirks. And I've never delved into McLaren ownership, and I've got 24 hours left with this car. And whilst I am semi-dressed for a football match later, let's delve into the bad stuff. Now, over the last couple of days, I've spoken to a few friends and I've heard almost every argument under the sun as to why this car might have a few weird sounds coming from it. It's a press car, everyone's hammered them. It's well looked after and maintained by McLaren every single time it comes back to MTC. And I've driven a handful of press cars from other manufacturers and I don't get weird full lock steering creaks in the steering axle. And I also don't get this weird squeaking noise that I discovered yesterday whilst I was driving around the Cotswolds at low speed. So when you're crawling into a pub like that we've just driven past there, especially in electric mode, all of your senses become that little bit more heightened. So if I was to put it into electric mode now, and well, the one that really brought me back down to reality, that I was back behind the wheel of a McLaren less than 30 minutes after collecting this car from MTC, pulled into a petrol station, fancied a bottle of water, turned the car off, went into the shop, got my bits, came back out and this happened. Now, there's no real answer to this, and I suppose you can say the same for almost every manufacturer across the board that are creating hybrid systems to enhance the performance of a vehicle. The Ferrari 296 has had multiple recalls back to the dealership because of their hybrid system. The Artura has had a few hybrid issues. We had one down in the south of France with Seb. When I jumped in this car, I don't know why, I just felt like maybe it was the spec that had brainwashed me that I wasn't actually going to have any problems with this car. But you get the odd quirk, you get the odd little sound from this car, and every now and again you'll get a little electrical problem that actually, when you glaze over, this car, in my opinion, is the easiest supercar that you can daily. And when McLaren talk about that breadth of ability, the usability, the practicality, and the comfort and luxury, and then on the other side you've got all of this performance. I heard an amazing stat that this, with 680 horsepower, but weighs the same as a new BMW M135i, shows just how McLaren are focusing on power to weight, but ticking every single box and aspect of what you would want in a supercar. And yes, the price is a little bit steep. It's over £200,000. Would I buy one? If I had the money, if I had unlimited funds and I won the lottery and I won 10 million quid tomorrow, this would be my supercar on the driveway alongside a Bentley Bentayga. They are the two cars that I'd have. I think this car stands out from the crowd in a sleek and elegant way, but it still gives you that character and that performance from a brash supercar. The doors go up, and in this spec, it is an absolute silent assassin that I've absolutely loved putting miles on. And in a way, I've loved it more than the very silly pink Lamborghini that I had a couple of weeks ago. They know exactly what they're doing to me, because I can guarantee I'm going to walk back into MTC just like Sam did when he went to drop back the McLaren Artura. I'm going to be telling them I want one. And it's a car that you really don't have to drive fast, and it's not that loud. Okay, don't get me wrong, it sounds okay, but it's not a screaming V12. McLarens never have been. But it's got a little bit of, I don't want to make the comparison, but to me, you don't have to drive the Bugatti Chiron fast to pull eyes from the streets. Everyone looks at you rumbling along and goes, wow, that is an epic car. And I've got the feeling, just on the visuals, the McLaren Artura has a similar vibe. You can drive this car in full electric mode and people will still stare at you being like, what the hell is that? It is ahead of its time. It's one of the best looking cars I've ever driven. And in my opinion, it's also one of the best cars I've driven as well. So there we go. High praise. The bar is high. My expectations have been exceeded. And this, ladies and gentlemen, feels like the right direction for the future of supercars.